Whenever you're ready.
2020 experienced its fair share of crucially life-altering events, but the events that occurred on March 13th, 2020 took the whole world for a shock. This was the day that COVID-19 shut down the entire United States for weeks and weeks. The shutdown consisted of the closure of all schools, all non-essential businesses, and all sports venues. It also forced a new way of living which involved social distancing and quarantine. Social distancing was also referred to as social isolation, which was the isolation of someone infected by COVID-19. The forced home confinement from the pandemic affected the majority of the population, but most significantly children and adolescents. For teens in particular, quarantine led to increased screen time, reduced physical activity, and increased hours of sleep, which affected their anxiety, their mood, their sleep schedule, and their behavior negatively, which leads me to the question, how are behaviors such as enhanced curiosity, increased selfishness, and challenging rules in teens influenced as a result of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic? Curiosity, the desire for information, drives many of our human activities. Dating back to the start of time, teenagers have always been drawn to explore the unknown. Whether it leads them to them getting into trouble or leads them to getting new findings. Throughout the pandemic, teens were kept out of school and had no other choice than to explore the outside world. Parents would prefer their children go out and adventure rather than sitting around on their phones or sleeping the days away. Parents just assumed that their little angels were never going to cause any harm. But when you're a teenager and you're stuck and curiosity takes over, you're wondering what it feels like to smoke a joint or try a cigarette or maybe even wonder what alcohol tastes like. Curiosity and boredom are by far the most leading causes to kids trying new things, such as smoking, e-cigarettes, marijuana, and sex. When facing something uncertain and feeling curious, teens will act to resolve the uncertainty or curiosity, even if it leads to negative consequences. Teens have limited cognitive ability to comprehend negative long-term consequences for their actions. In this graph by the National Survey of Drug Use and Health, it shows the reported drinking patterns among 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students in November of 2021, which is roughly a year and 8 months after the initial COVID-19 shutdown. It shows that at least 1% of 12th graders, which average from 17 to 18-year-olds, drink daily, and at least 0.3% of 8th graders, which are about 13 to 14-year-olds, will drink daily also. The placement of programs in elementary schools to reduce drug use were not working. Programs like DARE are taught to students when they can hardly even comprehend what they're going to encounter in real-life scenarios. A study done by Celeste Kidd, a cognitive science professor at the University of Rochester, revealed that the participants at a young age increased teenage drug use. So instead of putting these programs in elementary schools, they should be taught to teens when they can better understand what actually happens to the body when they encounter drugs. Also, paying closer attention to students and schools individually and forming closer connections would make everyone feel like they have a safe place, and teachers would be able to better acknowledge the signs of drug and alcohol abuse. To get students more interested in these programs, they should involve more hands-on and interactive techniques. Not only would that involve students, but it would physically show them the harm that drugs can cause on their bodies. Though school funding and lack of student participation and attention would be an issue with these, the new set precautions would decrease teenage drug use dramatically. Selfishness is a passionate and exaggerated love for oneself and having lack of consideration for others. As teens were stuck at home isolated, they missed out on the socialization they needed from their peers. The socialization would have provided them with the attention and support that they needed to thrive in our society. Teenagers needed to find their needed attention elsewhere, and they chose that through their clothing and their social media platforms. Rachel Monroe, a contributing writer at The Atlantic, wrote an article called Ultra-Fast Fashion is Eating the World. She states that even if the pandemic couldn't stop teens from buying clothes they didn't need, teens were buying a piece of clothes every 5 days on average, and they did that and they became to think their garments were so little that they just thought of them as disposable. Retail stores took these teens' want for attention to their advantage and used them to promote their clothing through their social media. Teens would lie about their ages and home lives just to create these fake personas, putting themselves out there on top to ensure that these companies would choose them to boost their promotions. With implementing more normal social conditions, teens would get their needed socialization. While quarantined, teens should be encouraged to remain social with their peers. If companies would have refrained from using teens to promote their platforms through their social media, it would have protected the integrity of the teens and prevent them from fighting with each other to be the top dog. Teens witness so many things being on social media, and when they feel discouraged from seeing other influencers, they will automatically resort to doing anything to protect themselves. Therefore, keeping a constant check on their mental health is extremely important. Though these solutions may negatively affect a company's income because they would have to stop using teens to do their bidding, it would benefit teens by savoring many of their relationships, whether it be with their parents, their siblings, or just simply their friends and peers. While teens were cooped up in their rooms during quarantine, they began to think a lot. This thinking led to discoveries that they were their own person and they had no need to listen to anyone else and they could just do whatever they wanted. They particularly decided they didn't have to listen to their parents. In a study by doctors Kathy Dew, Ethan McCormick, and Eva Tesler from the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, they wrote that adolescents are more likely to resist rather than conform when their parents' attitudes conflict with their own personal attitudes. Teens wanted to do anything and everything that would make them look more cool and make them fit in more with a certain group. This often included defined rules with fashion and personal habits. The clothes kept getting bolder even when the parents called them inappropriate. Jokes were even more present so that they could fit in and by disobeying their parents. Teens' mental health was at an all-time low. Teens wanted anyone and everyone to notice them, and defining rules was the quickest way to achieve their goal. Teens need a direct sense of security and comfort within their lives. Without that, they will continue to follow toxic behaviors. Giving them easier access to teenage psychologists will assist in protecting their mental health. Without checking in on their mental health, teens will fall into slumps because they just don't feel like they fit in. Monitoring what teens are seeing on social media and maintaining a safe and secure home life will keep them in a constant state of feeling like they belong. While teens need these resources, it is hard to convince them that they have a problem, or especially to admit it to a stranger, even if it's a trusted professional like a psychologist. It can also lead to a power struggle between a teen and a parent and that professional. Maintaining a sense of equality between the teen and the parent is important so teens don't feel like they're being controlled by someone else or feel like they have overbearing parents. If teens feel like they are subject to someone else's plan, their behavior will overall worsen. In conclusion, behaviors such as enhanced curiosity, increased self-image, and challenging rules have been influenced as a result of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. The normal routines teens were once used to were interrupted and no longer viable in our new society due to the social distancing and quarantine. This led to them expressing themselves through their outlets, and more often this included their fashion being more bold and personal found habits like alcohol and drug use.
All right. Let's see. What information did you need that you were not able to find or locate?
It's not necessarily that I couldn't find the information, it's just that it's not there yet. I wanted and needed the long-term consequences of what's going to happen in 10 years. How is this going to affect the next generation and our parenting styles? Being in this generation that was just affected by it from a teen, how is it going to affect my teens in the future? It's just not there yet. There's no way to locate it. We just have to wait and see what's going to happen.
Okay. What are your implications of your findings to your community?
Well, part of what I wanted to include but didn't really have time or space to add in was how it affected them in school. But I did have a little bit of extra time where I could look up, and actually the dropout rates have increased drastically. And that's going to affect our community. I mean, if you're dropping out, you can't get a job, and you can't thrive in the society, and you can't help your community in any way because you don't have the educational grounds to do it.
Okay. Thank you.